Yeah, how's everything been? I saw that you retired. I guess I missed some of the tweets or something. You're still
Well, I'm not full-time streaming anymore,
okay.
so I'm still like full-time YouTuber. But
Okay.
in 20 like during the COVID years, I was like 12 to 18 hours a day working
Hmm.
because I had nothing else to do. And that was when everybody was really into Total War Warhammer 2. So I would be making videos, or I would be live streaming, or I would be sleeping. That was it. That was my routine, day in and day out. And so basically, at the end of COVID, like the end of 2022, I decided no more of that because it was exhausting. And said no more to like this ridiculous, like 12 to 18-hour days. No more live streaming, just videos from now on. But I'll still live stream every now and again. So every now and again, I throw in a few live streams. I might live stream 2 or 3 times a month. Occasionally, it'll be really good, so I'll live stream like 10 times a month. And that's basically what happened in May. I just streamed more than average, but way less
So when
than what
did
I
you
used
change
to.
that schedule? Because last year you were still pushing regularly, I think. When did you?
No, I
No.
stopped at uh, November 2022. So 2023, I
Oh,
was not full time.
okay.
So like there would be entire months where there was just no live streams, but sometimes I would live stream like 4 times in a week and then just not live stream again for a month, sort of thing. So it
Yeah,
just
but
was
I
irregular.
thought most of the income was coming from live streaming.
No, not really.
It's the VODs,
It dropped off. Well, not even the VODs, just videos. So live streaming
like
definitely added a
sponsorships.
boost. No, not even sponsorships.
So
So
just
the
like
vast
the
majority,
CPMs from the videos.
yeah, my videos are the biggest earners, and the thing is, they just take up so much less time. So live streams are definitely supplementary to that. And it was really good during COVID because people were super generous during COVID.
Hmm.
And then after Warhammer 3 came out, I just couldn't make as much during live streams anymore. The turnout was nowhere near as good. The revenue I couldn't compete. So I was like, well, I had a good run, so I stopped it. Well, I could have. It was definitely viable to keep going as a business, but not viable to keep it going as a lifestyle. So I
Yeah,
said,
yeah, this is gonna kill
money
you.
should not be the be all and end all. You shouldn't kill yourself trying to make money.
Hmm.
So I said enough of that.
Got it. But we can touch on some of
Yeah.
that the theoretically as well. I'm gonna start the spaces. I'm gonna mute the site after I start it. Okay, if you can click on the spaces as well.
Well, how do I do that?
In the if you click on the tweet, when you'll say like join or listen to.
App building tensions.io.stream.
Not that one. That will take you to the streaming platform I built. You just want to join the Twitter Spaces. Here, I'll send you the link again. Let me. Um,
Okay. Yeah, because there's two links here. Is it x.com/spaces? That one?
yeah, yeah, that one. I'll send it here.
So it says here to start listening. Is that what I click
Yep,
on?
yep. Okay, if you can request to be a speaker.
I've never done this before. Okay, here we go. I clicked the button, but it just doesn't seem to do anything.
Yeah, it should ping me if you request. Uh, is it not pinging me? Yeah, this is sometimes glitchy. How do I? Okay, there we go. It's just laggy. Approve. Okay. Give it a second. You'll be a speaker. We both unmute on the spaces, but then you have to go to the browser tab up top and mute it so there's no uh, feedback echo.
Okay, so I've muted it on the tab, so there's no more echo.
Yep.
and I'm now a speaker. Yeah,
Yep, and then now you need to unmute here so people can hear us in the spaces.
unmute.
You're still muted in the spaces. There you go. Okay,
Okay.
we can get started. And yeah, so thanks Legend for taking the time out to hop into this chat with me as a favor. I'm starting this project to bring more awareness around like alien simulation theory and religion, all of this stuff. I think you're one of the few gaming influencers that can really discuss this, and we do have like a rapport. We've been friends for a while now, so I feel comfortable with you. We're not gonna be like shouting at each other and like
Yeah, for sure.
doing ridiculous stuff. So yeah, so started this project called Building Tensions to pretty much try to draw awareness to this whole alien phenomenon that's been growing over the last few years. Then I started diving deep down this rabbit hole. When you kind of start off with aliens, you think it's like all fun and games, but when you really start to research and you try to understand what's going on, it gets much deeper than that. Like I started with Anunnaki, ancient civilizations, or pre Sumerian, and then you connect some of this Anunnaki kind of research that you're doing from like Sumerian tablets, um, from the Egyptian period to some of the Abrahamic biblical texts where they talk about the Elohim, and it seems like there's a lot of overlap between the Elohim and Anunnaki, and then you start to at least what I did was I looked into all of the religions. You were just talking about that, right? And I started looking into all of these different religions. I realized they all have the same origin story, where with man, and then after that I got to like the end. I wanted to look at like what is the afterlife. They have all the same beginning. They talk about the flood, Noah's Ark, and stuff like that. Then I get to the end and the afterlife. I'm looking at this afterlife stuff, and they're all the same type of afterlife. Well, like there's a mention of a heaven and a hell, multiple different planes. Some of the words are different because different language, different translations. I'm like, okay, now this is super weird. Where you have the same beginning and same end. Like, why do we have all these differences between cultures and people believe in all these different things, where it seems like it's all the same stuff going on? And then I started looking into the simulation theory and seeing if I could find anything about the matrix in these religions, and I was able to find it in most of the religions. Like in Hinduism and Buddhism, they talk about samsara. In Islam, they talk about like some type of illusion that you're in. In Christianity, I think it's very, very loosely mentioned. But if you go to like the Gnostic Bible, it talks about the Matrix a lot more in depth. Then it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, well now all of the religions sound the same. They all talk about the same beginning. They talk about a very similar end. They talk about simulation theory. Like what the heck is going on? So I'll just start it from there. I know we haven't I haven't warmed you up for this.
And that's okay. Yeah, that is definitely a lot deeper than anything that I've read. That's for sure. Like I don't really consider myself that much of a philosopher or in real need of those kind of answers, but I try to listen where I can and try to be open-minded and try not to let, I guess, my indoctrination dictate exactly what I believe.
Yeah, I mean,
And just
go ahead.
well, I think that's basically all I had to say on that particular note.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not very religious. I'm kind of like a loose Buddhist. I don't like religiously practice Buddhism. I just try to be a good person and believe in karma, right? And
Yeah,
I,
that's basically how I feel about it all as well. I think that's generally what most people do feel is that they have a set of beliefs and maybe it was influenced by religion. Some people it's directly like heavily influenced by religion, but everyone's different in their various different ways. I think it's a very individual experience, spirituality, and that it's all just there to guide how we live our lives, our motivations to do certain things, and in how to find meaning in life.
yes, I think it's partly that, But when I dug down the rabbit hole, it's much more. And based off of the being not religious and being like kind of like originally thinking all of this stuff is just like it's whatever you want to believe, and religious is a construct to control people to keep people civilized. That's what I originally thought. So, and they all talk about like, let's say, karma or good and bad deeds and how they can reflect on you. Oh, that's how I originally started. But when I started diving into this alien stuff, and there isn't much information we have on aliens outside of whistleblower information that we have, and some documented abductions for anecdotal, many different cases of anecdotal documented abductions, like I think millions of them, but they're all individual. They're not like groups of people, large groups of people seeing them. So still very anecdotal. And then you kind of hit a wall on trying to understand aliens because a lot of this information is kind of hidden from us by all of the different governments. So if I'm trying to build this project about aliens, and I thought it'd be fun to build it around kind of documenting it on the blockchain, an NFT set that uh, theoretically will forever solidify these alien shadow overlords that rule over our planet and humanity as a whole. I'm like, okay, it's not going to be that deep. I'll just look into this reptilians and grays. Then I'm like, okay, well, let me just try to really understand this to make sure I don't look like an idiot going into building out this set. And with the Anunnaki, like the stories line up surprisingly with the Abrahamic religious texts about the war between angels. And if you look at the Anunnaki, it starts out with benevolent creators of man, and then they fight over each other because they keep intermingling with humanity, and then they go through a whole bunch of like, I guess, the different trials and obstacles of trying to determine what they can do with us and what they shouldn't be doing with us. Then a great flood happens, and they wanted to let us get wiped out so they wouldn't have to worry about dealing with us anymore. And then I think one of the benevolent Anunnaki decides to give Noah some blueprints for building an ark and save humanity. It works. He saves humanity. They come back, try to do it all over again and be super nice, and they fight. They fight and have a really big battle because one group is like, leave them alone and let the humans be, and then the other group is like, no, like, we're their masters, we should be doing this. And then my interpretation of that is like a battle between the angels, and then one group becomes the fallen angels, and they lose. And that's what's kind of documented. That's not documented in the ancient Sumerian tablet text. They just mentioned that there's a war. After the war is over, all the ancient Sumerian tablet text showcase is how these gods turn mean and cruel. We have to worship them now, and we have to offer sacrifices to them now. They teach us how to war. They split us up and shorten our lifespans, kind of pretty much give us different skin colors. They do a lot of different things to like separate us. And then I try to like corroborate this information any way I can, and I saw that people were looking at religious scriptures, and I looked into the religious scriptures and it's like, okay, they have the same beginning. So that's how I got to that point. And yeah, then when I get to the ending part and you start to like look into the afterlife of the different levels, there it's kind of repeating myself here a bit, but it's like it's very very similar. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think you have kind of looked into some of this. I mean, you spent a lot of time, I guess, with ancient civilizations in some of your games as well. I'm sure it's not
Yeah, but
as
they're
relevant.
just video games. That's not
Yeah,
real education.
yeah,
But if I was to define myself in any way, I would call myself a skeptic. I have a massive distrust of any authoritarian type of telling me this is how it is. Any kind of authority that says this is how you should behave. I've always had a distrust of those sort of systems. And that's probably due to my upbringing. I was raised Catholic, and I had a very um, serious revolt from that system. Um, and ever since then, I've just sort of paved my own way. I don't let authority dictate what I'm going to do. Like, I kind of just follow my gut. So when it comes down to religious texts saying anything, I have a massive amount of distrust towards it, generally speaking, because from my understanding, especially with ancient civilizations, most of these texts are possibly the philosophers of their time trying to make sense of a universe that isn't
Mm.
providing them with any answers. And so they see people of different cultures, of different colors, and they come up with an explanation that best suits their culture for the time being. And as time progresses, we retain that information, but our knowledge and our understanding of the universe gets better, to the point where sometimes some of these religious texts become kind of absurd, in like a modern context, but they were very much reasonable at the time. It's just that because of, I guess, the human experience, we as a collective group tend to trust our elders. And if our elders have bad information and then they pass that along for many generations, it's still bad information. Like, for example,
Yeah.
my grandparents were heavily Catholic, um, and they believed it 100%. And in my opinion, they were just wrong. They were just flat out wrong because they were not educated people. They just trusted authority, and it didn't hurt them by any means whatsoever. But a lot of the things that I witnessed when I was a kid, I now look back on and think this is ridiculous. I would never do any of this stuff. All the rituals and everything like that in order to just the Catholic experience. But that's from my personal experience, and it actually reflected a lot in my siblings as well. We all sort of like threw off the shackles, I suppose, because there's just better information out there now.
Yeah, I honestly I was totally on board with what you're saying in the past, but I've gotten just like I feel like I got like gobsmacked in the face once I started doing this research. Like
Yeah, no,
what
totally understood with that. I'm not saying that anything is necessarily incorrect. I just have a massive skepticism for it. When it comes to aliens and that kind of stuff, I would admit that I don't know enough to believe anything, but I want to keep an open mind. Like, I could believe that there is aliens among us and that there are overlords, but I won't just take it on faith
yeah,
or authority or anything like that. And
yeah.
I certainly won't look at religious texts and go, "Ah, they met the aliens." Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know, because especially when I look at the Roman Empire, liars, just
Mm.
straight up liars. They just lied to their people to control them, and people just trust authority for the most part, and it keeps people in line. It keeps civilizations together, but it's not the truth. And so I think I can stay in line without being lied to. So I've actually got a
That's still
really
going
big
on
hate
now, by the way.
whenever. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, I understand that when I feel like I've been lied to, um, and I've got a big distrust of authority. That doesn't mean that what I'm doing or what I believe is correct. I just have a massive skepticism to any sort of uh, ancient texts or anything like that. Because when I see them, I just think they're just using that to control people.
Yes. Yeah. So that I consider you someone that's pretty intelligent. The games that you play are very, very complex as well. A lot of strategy, tactic based as well. What is your interpretation if all of the religions are saying kind of the same, sending the same message from the beginning to the end, and overall it's kind of like sharing the same message? Like, what would your interpretation of that be if it's saying like
Yep.
we're all created the same way, you kind of all go to the same place when you die, if you do these things and they're good, it will give you a better outcome. If you do these things that are bad, and it'll give you a worse outcome. That's kind of like the fundamental aspect that they all said. If you look into it like relatively detailed and you try to like overlook a lot of the translations in different languages, the details are actually very eerily similar. My interpretation of that is they are describing how to play the game of this matrix that we live in, and that's why all of the religions and these ancient texts all sound very similar. It's because they're all translating the one guidebook on how to play the game into multiple different languages in over multiple different periods. That's but like what would your interpretation of that be?
Obviously, I would take a skeptical approach to it in that ever really since the Bronze Age, I suppose, that the various different cultures on Earth have been connected in one way or another via trade routes. And so it's not just materials and resources that get passed on through trade routes, but also culture. And the closer that you find a like a trading culture, the more similar some of their cultural stories are. Like when you look at the difference between Roman and Greek culture, very similar, right? They're basically worshiping the same gods, but they call them something different. And then you go to Egypt, and they're actually it's quite similar again, a little bit more different. Um, so I think what happens is they hear about these stories from some origin point, and they adapt. People adapt things that they like about certain cultures and then mold it to suit them. So the Greeks would be like, "Oh, have you heard about this guy Zeus?" I'm like, Zeus? Oh yeah, I like the sound of that. I'm going to call him Jupiter though, you know. And so you get these changes over time as they adopt certain ideas. There may be some other connection, but when I think about a matrix or
I think that's a
aliens or
rational
something like
approach
that.
to it, by the way.
Yeah, well, I try to take I guess a rational approach. I'm very much like a materialist. I see the universe and I see a material universe. I don't see anything abnormal. I think I see a chaotic universe where there is some order within the chaos that has to be structured manually. It doesn't just happen automatically. So, um, in the case of like human civilization, like it has to be forged over the course of thousands of years in order to get to this sort of point. It doesn't just happen by accident. Um, and whether or not it's guided by another force, I don't see it. Um, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like most rational, logical people would go with your approach, and that was my approach until I jumped down this rabbit hole.
I'm saying that my is the way. I think my way is sort of like a clean slate. It just
Hmm.
sort of washes away all the old and makes way for new. So if I was presented with enough evidence, I could certainly believe something. But I also see so much misinformation out there. When you see
Yeah.
um, two different sources claiming aliens, let's just use as an example, and it's vastly different, like it's inconsistent, it allows you to, it sort of makes you be skeptical. One of them might be telling the truth, and the other one might be lying. And but you just can't differentiate between the two because you've got no sort of basis for comparison.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm on the same page over there. Um, what are your thoughts on simulation theory and living in a matrix?
Um, as in, like, this is this all just a simulation, and then when we die, we wake up, sort of thing.
I guess whatever your interpretation of it would be.
Mm. Well, I think if you take it from a literal sense, I definitely don't believe it. But if you take it from like a metaphorical point of view, I can kind of understand that, I guess. And that when you use metaphors to explain reality, the problem with that is that everyone's going to have a different interpretation of it. And some people will think that it's a literal interpretation, and some people think it's a metaphorical interpretation, and then argue over it, and they're not really arguing about the same thing. So if I was going to interpret it, I would interpret it from a metaphorical point of view because I don't literally believe it. Um, but I think in the sense of a simulation, the way that I think about it is in terms of immortality for a mortal. How does a mortal human being attain immortality? And immortality can be defined in many different ways. In terms of existing forever in a conscious state, there is no evidence to suggest that that is possible at this
Yeah,
stage here.
yeah.
But in terms of, can your existence have impact beyond your lifespan, then I do believe in that. And I think that's more of a case of legacy. And the simulation, I guess, one way to interpret it is that you live your life, you do whatever you can to leave a legacy behind that ensures that your impact exists beyond your death. For example, let's just say Isaac Newton. He has a very strong legacy because he developed certain science and mathematics that is still being used today, I suppose. Certain, I guess, generals and historical leaders would have a huge amount of impact. You could even say certain bad ones also have an impact, but it's in a negative sort of way. It just depends. I think it depends on whether or not you want to leave a positive legacy or a negative legacy.
Are you talking about like
And some people,
reincarnation or
no, I don't.
like never
Reincarnation.
dies,
Okay,
never
so
dying or something like that by legacy? But
no,
I
I
thought you
mean
would
more
go
of a
like
case
some
of
Matrix route with Neo and then getting unplugged, and then
no,
that's not how you
no.
see the Matrix in simulation.
No, I don't see it anything like that. I mean, I'm trying to interpret it from like a
Okay.
metaphorical point of view rather than a literary point of view. Like if I watch The Matrix, the actual movies, and think that's what we live in, I don't believe that. I think that we are actually alive and that we get to live our life, and that when we die, that's it for our physical existence. That everything that we are exists in our brain, and that when our brain dies, everything that we were dies with it. But the sum of our actions can live on. Like, for example, when you have children, your children carry on your genetic makeup, and as long as your lineage exists in a way, so do you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But how is that related to the Matrix and simulation theory?
Well, that's the thing. I don't. My way of interpreting it, because I don't literally believe
Oh,
in
okay.
the Matrix theory, and I also don't really understand it. So you'd have to firstly explain it to me, what you're talking about, and then I could give you my opinion based on that. So,
Okay.
maybe explain what your interpretation of the simulation theory is.
Yeah, my interpretation of the simulation theory before sharing any of my thoughts would be similar to that of the Matrix and Neo, that the world that we live in, at least according to some physicists, uh, saying is maybe not real. We're maybe in some type of video game simulation, like Ready Player One thing, where we're being piloted by somebody else, or like we're our own like AI in a game where we just function on our own and are doing our own thing, but have some type of consciousness attached to these characters that we call our bodies inside of this simulation we call our world. And we're just running around, and maybe when we end, we start over into another body or another type of game. Just at the end of the day, it's kind of not really real or relevant. And if you look hard enough and you try to awaken yourself, you can potentially break out of the matrix like Neo is and get unplugged. But there isn't, based off of simulation theory, no one understands the rules of the construct enough to be able to define what you would need to do. It's all theoretical, and there's a high probability of us being in a simulation and a game. This life may not be real. That's kind of like it. But outside of that, everyone is open, kind of has their own open interpretation of what the simulation would be like. Right now, it's just a lot of discussion around. Yeah, we could be in a simulation, but that looks like we're not really sure. We'll figure it out once we have more science, type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I suppose that's where I would be on that. I would definitely like to see more scientific evidence to support that. I think that the simplest answer is usually the best, in that it's probably not a simulation, in that what happens in our world is too tragic and too random and too unfair for it to really be some sort of like what's the point of a simulation? What would be the purpose of it? Is it just some cosmic television show? It just sort of doesn't really make sense for that to exist that way. At least in my mind. Not to say that it isn't true, but to me it just doesn't like what would be the point of having a simulation for an 8 billion people, and some people are born into immense luxury and wealth, and some people are born into the most extreme poverty. What is the point of their simulation compared to someone else's? What if somebody was born and then they get hit by a car when they're 5 years old or something like that? What's the point in? There's just too much tragedy for something like that, in my opinion, to make sense of it being a simulation, because it'd be like if it was a TV show where there was no main character, there was just no purpose to it whatsoever. Like, do you remember the show Jim Carrey? It's not a show, the movie, The Truman Show, I think it was called.
Yeah, Truman Show. I was going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the only non-actor inside of a TV show, and he was the central protagonist in that particular show, and it was him breaking away from that. Um, Everything was just revolved around him. So I guess you could say that in that sort of situation there, that was like a Matrix theory, because at the very end of the movie, he actually leaves the studio. He breaks away from it. But in order for something like that, I think, to make sense, you have to have a protagonist. So who is the protagonist of this simulation of Earth? I can't see one. Um, Everyone thinks that they are their own protagonist. If you ask someone who's the main character in your story, they'll always say themselves. You're not a supporting character to somebody else's story. You are your own your own lead actor, I
Main
suppose, in
character
your
or something
story.
like that.
There's 8 billion stories out there being told simultaneously, and everyone else is also a supporting character to those stories. And I don't think that makes sense in terms of like a Matrix type simulation, but it makes a lot more sense in terms of a materialistic world where there is no defined purpose, but it is up to each person that exists to find their own purpose. That's what I think of it. Again, when it comes to simulation theory, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I, I'm just a little bit shocked in a good, in a more like happy way, just because you sound exactly like I do, and that's how I was, and that's what I believed.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
it could just be that you found the information that I haven't found, and maybe if I saw the information that you had, I would think differently. Um, you can't force someone to
Yeah,
believe something if they haven't understood what it is that you understand, I guess.
yeah. No, I'm just like super. I think you sound exactly like me, and I think it's super interesting. It's super cool. I'm like, oh, okay. And so yeah, but my point of view is I've become. I'm not gonna like try to force it. I just want to have a dialogue, but I,
Yeah, for sure.
I've kind of like become a believer in this all of a sudden. I've went from being you and thinking exactly the same what you do into like almost like brainwashing myself. I don't know if that's the right term, but same thing. Like from what I found and starting from where you're at is like a huge leap. Like I didn't really think too much of this. I wasn't really looking. I was just looking at aliens. And then eventually you start to try to understand aliens and then understand like these different dimensions that they're coming from. If you line up these dimensions with the religious text and you associate or kind of replace the word dimension with realm or plane, and then you also then go back and look on the scientific side where these whistleblowers or scientists, physicists are talking about we have to have at least 11 different dimensions, or these aliens are telling us they're coming from a different dimension. And then I just started connecting this with different dimension, afterlife planes, afterlife realms. Like it sounds very similar. Are these the same thing? Are these like entities and gods that are mentioned in all of these scriptures from these different realms just aliens coming from a different realm into our realm? That's one aspect of it, and then I started looking into uh, the Matrix. If I could find any documentation about the Matrix, I'll be okay. I'm finding stuff about aliens in these ancient texts. Not sure how real they are. Let me see what can I get about the Matrix. Did we just make this up on our own? Some really creative person that designed this whole structure and theory that we can kind of play around with and make movies off of and turn it into a great story, or did they get it from somewhere? If so, where did they get it from? And if likely there's the most comprehensive texts that are like passed down throughout history are probably like some of these religious scriptures and texts. So there's probably a lot of meat there. Starting from that, I'm just playing ChatGPT and AI is awesome. I just keep digging into it. Uh, it brought back all of these different variations of the word matrix or the concept of what the word matrix is from all of the different religions, and it gave me its version. And I looked at it, and it all seemed eerily similar. The Matrix, as we understand it from what the movie and Neo is not exactly that way. It seems like the Matrix, on how all of the religions interpret it as, is a never ending cycle that continuously repeats itself through reincarnation.
Well, I can definitely agree with that. I do believe that history repeats itself.
Yeah, yeah. There's that part, but how the religions describe it is just in Chinese they call it Lun Hui, and that's what the Buddhist word of samsara means in Chinese Lun Hui, which means like circle of return, and you're just always in this reincarnation cycle, and it seems like these religious texts all talk about this cycle. The the Abrahamic religions a little bit less so, but there is references of it. I think Jesus does like some type of reference with somebody asking Jesus like, "Oh, why is like my life like this now? Is this something my parents did that I had to pay for? I didn't do anything." And then Jesus like references it's like something that happened before this life that you did, or something like that. But the outside of that, the biblical texts, Abrahamic texts, don't really talk too much about that. For some of the maybe Buddhist and Hindu texts, they dive deep down into this whole cycle matrix theory, and that's kind of how I got into it. And I ran this by ChatGPT, like without empirical scientific evidence, just based off of theoretical, written, documented text. What is the probability on a 1 to 10 of this being true based off of all of these religious texts from different periods of time in different cultures and religions? And it gave me like an answer of 8 to 9 out of 10. This is the probability of this being true.
So you asked Chat GPT
Yeah.
about that, is that right?
Yeah, and I gave it all of the
Yeah.
information and then like try to separate it. And originally it told me
Yeah.
without scientific empirical evidence, it would be really low. I'm like, well, we just don't have enough of that. So if you remove the scientific empirical part of it and solely base it off of what we have written down historically, what would it what would the likelihood be? And it said 8 to 9 out of 10.
I think the simplest answer to that is that you shouldn't go looking for the greater meanings of life from Chat GPT at all. But also something I think that Elon Musk said fairly recently is that a lot of these AI generated bots, AI bots or whatever, is that they're not seeking truth, but they're seeking approval. And so if what what these like Chat GPTs want to do is not provide you with the correct answer, but provide you with a satisfactory answer, provide you with an answer that you'll be happy with. So it will oftentimes, like I don't use Chat GPT personally. I try to avoid using any kind of AI.
Hmm.
Um, I try to destroy AI basically when I play games. Um,
I think you do a good job at that.
when yeah, well, that's two completely different things. But anyway, when it comes to something like ChatGPT, if I put something into there and sort of imply bias, it will confirm my bias.
I yes. I agree with part of that. I've played around with ChatGPT enough to be able to kind of catch some of the wokeism that's in there, and then try to like beat that out of a lot of my prompts, or make sure my prompts are really really strict. But yeah, I do try to look for some of that stuff, and you just take it with a grain of salt. That was just me
Yeah,
trying to play
yeah,
around
no,
with all of this
it's all
stuff.
good. I mean, it's definitely interesting, for sure that it would say 8 or 9 out of 10. But another thing that I would say is that it's either true or it isn't. It's not a case of what's the probability of this all being a simulation. It's either 100% or 0%. Those are the only two options. This either is a simulation or it isn't. And saying it's, well, it's 50-50 because those are the two options. No, that's not right either. It's kind of like if I said to you, what are the odds that the Earth is round or the Earth is flat? And it said, well, it's 50-50 because there's two choices. Well, no, it's actually a 100% chance that it's round because that's just what it is. And so I think what we're in a point of right now is asking a question where we're on an Earth and we can't see outside of that position and see whether or not it is either flat or round. We can't see outside at this point of time. That doesn't mean that the matrix or the simulation isn't there, but there's no way to really go outside, have a look, and go, that's for the answer. And I think that's where I run into problems. And another question, another point I would make about it is how important is it that we know about this? Let's just say that the simulation theory is 100% correct, and everybody is basically just puppets. And there's some alien overlord that's in charge of all of it. I don't know. I'm probably butchering the ideas here, but
I think
it's
you're
just
right.
hypothetical.
I think you're pretty right. That at least based off my
So
theory. We'll start it from there after you're
yeah,
done.
yeah, sure. So again, sorry if I'm butchering it, but
Yeah, you're not. You're doing a
let's
good
just
job.
say that all of that is 100% true. What is the point on believing it at this stage? What would we benefit from understanding this? Would it help our lives? Would it allow us to break free of it? Um, what would be the purpose of it? See, understanding the Earth not being flat allows us to navigate the planet a lot better. Allows us to understand it. Allows us to go into space. So, what would understanding the simulation provide for us that are still alive within it? I guess
Yeah.
that's a big question that I would have.
Yeah, so I also, and that's why I'm enjoying this conversation a lot, maybe more than you, because
I know I
I
love this
felt,
conversation. I love
oh,
talking about this kind of stuff. I don't have a problem with disagreements. Like if someone says my favorite color is blue, and I go my favorite color is red, we can't be friends. It's just different opinions, different tastes. There's nothing wrong with having conversations that are a little bit uncomfortable because that's how we learn. When we're uncomfortable, that's how we become
yeah,
stronger. I mean, that's why you
totally
go to the
agree.
gym and you injure yourself so that you can become stronger. If you live a life of comfort and you live in a bubble where you don't subject yourself to ideas that are uncomfortable, you are going to be soft. You're going to be mentally soft if you don't subject yourself to ideas that are uncomfortable.
You're crushing the Matrix, by the way. So I'll pick it up from there. The reason why I'm saying I'm having so much fun is because I asked myself the same question, the same exact question that you asked me. Like, why the f am I still going down this hole? What good does it do me? I kept going down the hole, however, because I felt like I probably already had somewhat, I had comfortable information to be able to kind of build out this NFT project with these aliens, but I just kept going down the hole. Like maybe I can learn some more. Maybe there's something I didn't understand, so I'll just keep going. But it seems a little bit counterintuitive because if you realize you're in a matrix, and it's kind of very demotivating. And then I found a light at the end of the tunnel. So that was kind of like the really interesting aspect. Based off of my theory, we're living in a simulation based off of the information that I consumed, and there is reincarnation, there is karma, and all of this stuff. But there's also
I
like
do actually believe in karma and reincarnation to an extent. Do you want me to like tell you what I think of reincarnation
sure,
is?
sure, yeah,
So I believe in a balancing of the universe in one way or another, and sometimes it presents itself unfairly. Basically, the entire universe is one mathematical equation, and it has to balance itself out. If evil happens in one area, good has to happen in another area. Good can't exist if evil doesn't exist. Light can't exist if dark doesn't exist. There has to be a balance between these forces in order for it to balance out. You can't just have 100% of the world be good, because if 100% of something is good, then it's actually neutral. So there has to be two sides of the forces to balance themselves out. And so with reincarnation, I believe that that is a way of manifesting these forces, one way or another, constantly shifting. So when I die, the material that makes up my body becomes something else, and the
yeah.
equation balances out. That's my thought of it. Anyway, you
Yeah,
go
I
on.
think that's completely accurate. There is a balancing of everything. To get back on the topic of the matrix and how it works, after I confirmed that, at least not confirmed, after I came to the belief that there is a matrix, then I started to look into like the meaning of the matrix. What is the point of our existence if we're living in a matrix? And came to the conclusion that we're all somewhat. Maybe this isn't the right interpretation because I've had chats with some people. They agree with what I'm saying. They just don't agree with the way I'm saying it. But the way I'm saying is the best way for me to understand that we all come from a creator, the creator. The creator is outside of the system. And the system is a creation of the creator, and in this system, it is forever repeating itself. And also in this system, there's different levels, and we're on the Earth level. And based off of our karma, you can just think of there's a ticker or a counter on top of your head that's adding it all up. If your number is within the same range, you stay here. If it goes up much more, you go to a higher plane and become an alien. If it goes down much more, you go to a lower plane and become an alien. And from from
So
there, like,
actually, just being sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
being real pedantic. If you became an alien, then you wouldn't actually be an alien. The Earth would be an alien to you because
Yes, yes, we
aliens and
are
aliens
aliens.
mean
That's
something
what
different.
somebody was saying to me yesterday. It's like I don't
Yeah,
like the word alien. I'm like,
we're
why?
aliens
Because
to
like
aliens.
we're
Yeah,
probably not here. Basically, what he was trying to say is we're not here first. I'm like, well,
yeah,
if you use any other word, you're going to confuse people.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
That's true. Yeah, yeah. I gotcha. I don't know why. I
not
just
he
felt
told
the
me
need
to
to
use
mention it.
non-human
It's all good.
entities, non-human
Yeah,
entities.
that's I would say non-human entities is a way better way of explaining it. And that's the thing with this kind of stuff is that you have to be ultra specific. The more specific you are, the easier it is to understand. The more you use vague terms, it it can be misinterpreted, which is why I
Yes,
always try to strive for being ridiculously specific and thorough, because otherwise it will be taken out of context. Sorry, so I
yes,
just wanted to make that point there.
yeah, no.
So yeah,
Um,
non-human entities.
yeah,
Yep.
non-human entities. So basically, based off your karma, you go up and down. We're all in this game, and yeah, supposedly this realm is the easiest realm for any part of the creator to break the cycle of the matrix. I originally thought breaking the matrix was literally like breaking out of this circle and all of the levels and going back to the source. After a few discussions with people, I've come to the understanding that it's not breaking outside of the system and going back to the source. It's becoming what Neo is in the Matrix. That's what like people and other religious experts that are in agreement of this simulation theory are saying. They're saying that you basically become Neo and the rules of the system don't apply to you. You can go to any timeline, you can appear anywhere, you can fly around, teleport, and do all of these things that we cannot comprehend. That's what breaking the matrix is. But the goal of the participants inside this matrix, which the theory is one of the prevailing theories. There's maybe like two of them, two or three of them. One of the prevailing dominant theories is the matrix is designed as a training ground for the creator to empower itself and train different pieces of itself. So the purpose of us being here is to train ourselves, and the purpose, and it kind of aligns with kind of the rules that most humans live by because it's the inherent rules of the system. If you are here doing diddly squat, you will not have a good life. And whether or not you're a good person doesn't even matter. You could be doing diddly squat and you can be the nicest person, have no negative karmic retribution, but the system is designed to bring struggle to you because the system wants you to learn. The system wants you to complete this training ground so you can go back to the source. And that's what you're put here. So if you're not learning, if you're not chasing after your dreams, whether your dreams is becoming, the biggest YouTuber in the world for, let's say, Total War Games, or it's to have a wife and children, or it's to build a conglomerate empire, to defeat the aliens. If you are not chasing it, and you are not chasing it with like wholehearted, enthusiastic intent, and you're just half-assing it, the system is designed to bring the struggle to you. So you can
That's actually
see,
really
yeah,
interesting what you've just said,
yeah.
because what you've just said to me is exactly what I would say is the meaning of life. That's like the
That's the
exact definition that I would
fundamental
say
rule of the
is,
game. That's what I've
yeah,
come to the
is to
conclusion of.
find, when people ask me, it doesn't happen that often. When people ask me, what is the meaning of life? I said, be the best person you can be. Find that meaning
Yeah.
yourself. We don't all have one directive. We've all got our own separate directive, and it's in our head already. You just have to chase it and do something with it. There are a lot of people that do nothing and they don't have a negative impact on the world,
Hmm.
but they also don't have a positive impact on the world. And they say that, I'm a nice guy or something like that. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to be neutral. The goal is to be positive, to progress forward, to do something of impact.
Yes. So I can give an example
That's
of
tough.
that.
That's tough to do.
Yeah, I don't want to name any names because I'm close to this person. This person would like hate me, so I'm not gonna name any names. But it's a girl.
Sure.
So it's a girl, and she's a wonderful person. Super sweet, super nice. Everybody loves her. Uh, Everyone gets along with her, and I wish I could be like her. But she doesn't push hard on her dreams because it's very difficult and it's very confusing and it's hard to take the first step. It's hard to find like what the right thing to do is. Whereas me, I will just like say fuck it, I'm just gonna take the first step. If I fall flat on my face, that's the best way to learn. That's the
100% totally agree with you. Was it Michael Jordan that said you fail 1,000 times before you succeed?
yeah,
I'm 100% in favor of that. You have to. Some people are too afraid of failure, so they won't try.
yes.
But I believe that you fail 100% of the opportunities that you let slip by.
Yes, and I feel like because of living by that principle, and I feel like I'm talking to, you know, I'm talking to a mirror here, just in a different skin color, and uh, the
It's only what's on the outside. We're same on the inside.
I agree, and a little bit on the weird alien topic. We were all the same skin color before,
I agree with that as well.
and it wasn't through evolution that we changed. That I don't know if you.
That's where that's where I
Yeah, yeah. It's
disagree.
not
But it's
through.
all good. It's all good.
Yeah, not through evolution. It was like changed supposedly by aliens. But back to the topic of that girl I was talking about, and she doesn't have any negative karma. No real bad things happen to her, but internally she's just like struggling all the time, and she feels like horrible. But at the same time, I try to be a good person as best as I can, but I've done some not good things in the past, and I try to repent for those things. I
Yeah,
try to
we all do. I
fix
think
them. Not all. This girl that I know just hasn't done any bad things ever. But yeah, but then she's struggling a lot. I used to get confused, like why is she struggling so much? She's such a good person, but according to the rules of the game, she's not playing the game the right way. She's also not getting penalized, like by like someone coming up and stabbing her or robbing her or something like that. But she's not getting what she wants, and then like internal turmoil and all of this other stuff happens. But that's kind of the belief that I came to after digging. This is one of the fundamental rules of the game.
that is really interesting, because that is like my worldview after digging about religion. That's basically when I threw off the hocus pocus of religion and took away what I think was the actual wisdom of it. Because I think that all the world's religions are very wise, masking a whole heap of bullshit. So if you just wash away all the bullcrap, there's a lot of wisdom there. And I've come to the same conclusion that you need to constantly be in conflict, in
Yes.
turmoil. Am I doing the right thing? Sometimes you won't do the right thing, and when you don't do the right thing, you have to make amends. Not
Yes.
just bury it and pretend it doesn't exist. You have to make amends to recover, your negative karma. And I don't believe it is an exact mathematical equation, but as a overview guideline, I suppose, like a railing that's not straight, that you have to hold on to, and sometimes it's hard to hold on to, but you should always try to hold on to it, because if you do, you will eventually get to where you need to be. But it's
Yes.
not a straight line.
Yeah, I think if there's anything outside of the whole alien stuff and like angels and demons, we didn't touch on that too much, and I probably won't go too much further down there. People can explore their own if they want to on that. But I think the positive aspect that can be taken away from this, if you believe we're in a simulation, there's a way to play the game. And there's everyone, like you mentioned, I believe, is their own main character and supporting character in other people's games all at the same time. And
Yeah, that's super interesting. I actually feel like I'm playing that game, but I don't believe in the game. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was exactly the same way as you before. And yeah, if you played the yeah, that's how I felt after I got like I came to this information. I'm like, wow, I've just been intuitively playing this game the right way. And my theory would be it's because you've played this game many times and you've developed over the course throughout this larger game many times. This game of reincarnation many times. And you know a lot more. I know a lot of people that can't even comprehend what I'm saying, or when they hear the things I'm saying, they just like turn off and shut down and go back into NPC mode. And that's kind of
It's
it.
funny that you said NPC, because that's kind of what was going through my head as well when you were talking about that other girl. I was like just thinking NPC. Anyway, go on.
Who's the NPC? Me or you?
When you no, 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 I didn't say you were NPC. I
Uh,
said when you were talking about that girl who has no negative karma, the one thing that popped into my head was NPC, like the way you
Never
were
thought.
describing it.
Okay, I know this person pretty closely. Hope it's not an NPC, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be
Look,
a problem if there is. Yeah,
I don't think that anyone is an NPC. It's just a way to describe someone who isn't playing the
I'm
game,
looking into
basically.
that by the way. I'm trying to figure out this whole
Yeah.
NPC concept. I haven't don't have any information that I can really talk about on it.
Well,
So.
let's just say hypothetically that all you're saying is completely correct, right?
Hmm.
I don't believe that anybody on Earth is actually an NPC. It's just some people just just don't know what they're doing, and they haven't got the right guidance, and they're just too afraid to try. But I don't think that anyone is actually an NPC. They just need to turn the right gears, get things going, and
Could
sometimes
be.
they need to push, sometimes they need to figure it out themselves. But I don't think anyone's an NPC.
One theory
I've
that I've
never met.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I've never met anyone that I felt like were just a bot, and they were just like a plant here. It's just I've met people that I think just haven't got the life experience um, to pursue, I guess, a meaningful life. Just not yet,
Yeah, yeah,
anyway.
I know a
And
bunch of people like that.
sometimes they won't, and they'll spend their whole life not doing it.
I,
Um,
yeah, what are
anyway,
your
so
thoughts? My interpretation of that is they are very early in the cycle, where maybe if people that have
yeah,
the same type of opinion like as you and I, maybe we've just spent a bit more time in
well,
the
they're
simulation.
stunted in some way due to an indoctrination, I guess. It just depends. And also, it's not really for me to say you haven't led a meaningful life. Like
True.
if somebody feels as though they have led a meaningful life and nobody else can appreciate that, well, then that's their problem. I think it's only a case of when somebody feels that inner turmoil and isn't doing anything about it, like then they're um, not. I don't know how else to put it. Not progressing in that system.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. One of the theories about NPCs that I saw that I don't really have an opinion on is M- NPCs exist, and only when you get close enough to interact with them does some type of consciousness enter, and then when you're gone, it leaves. And then that's the only theory I've heard about, and I don't even know how it works. So, but anyways, I'll just leave that for you to digest on the NPC stuff.
Yeah.
It's
I don't think I've ever met someone like that.
I mean, they would seem like a normal person when you're there. It's just right when you turn your back, it goes back into NPC mode. That's the theory.
Yeah, again, like, yeah,
You wouldn't
maybe,
see it.
maybe,
You
yeah,
wouldn't be
just,
able to see it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's I think there's been like some scientific tests that I've seen on some YouTube videos where scientists try to shoot some light through some type of like objects to scatter particles, and whenever the light is shooting through and people are looking at the light, the particles split up, and then when like when let me see, if you're not looking and you put a camera there, the camera will still show that they're splitting up. But if you turn your backs and you turn off the camera and then you run the light through again, if you catch it at the right moment, sometimes the light does something weird that it's not supposed to do, like a glitch in the matrix type of thing, which is
That'd be interesting to see.
yeah, I'll send you the video on that. You can actually
Yeah.
take a look at that. That'd be pretty interesting. But yeah, I think that's the main rule the Matrix live by. Even though everybody has their own game, whether they're supposedly non-human entity or someone across the planet, your best friend, male, female, child. Everyone is their own main player. The the belief that I have is that the rules of the Matrix are the same for everybody, whether you have the same goals or different goals. So that's kind of like the end of the discussion. I know we're on the top of the hour here. What are where did you think this was gonna go? What do you think about this discussion between aliens, some ancient civilizations, and simulation matrix theory?
It's definitely interesting. Like, I try to keep an open mind with all of this stuff. I would say that I'm very hard to convince with all the stuff, but I can understand the philosophy behind it, even if I don't believe in its literal existence. I can understand the meaning behind it, I suppose. Um, and I guess getting that leap from understanding the meaning from like a metaphorical point of view to believing it literally happens that way, that is a huge leap where we would need still amount of for something like that. But I can definitely appreciate it from I guess a philosophical point of view because it already very much aligns with what I have uh,
You're an old
learnt
soul. You're an
from
old
a
soul.
different point of view. An old soul, am I?
You're an old
People have
soul
always
in
said
this game.
I'm a grumpy old man. I played the game too many times, have I?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's three different types of people that are playing this game. One type of person is kind of they don't know they're in the game or they don't really care and they're they're kind of just here to without any type of purpose and they haven't identified a purpose yet. The that's kind of like player A. Player B is they played the game many times and they're trying now they've come to the point where they're really trying to figure out how to game the system, how to really beat the game, and they're trying to figure things out. That's player B. Player C is they're done with the game and they've gotten to the point where they kind of like understand everything. They're tired of this and they want out of the game. And those types of people are like the not in a negative way like suicide. By the way, apparently all of the information I'm reading from all of the different religions, what you don't want to do, worse than murder, probably worse than dropping a nuclear bomb is suicide. And what the rationale behind that is if we are all part of the creator, part of the source, you're wasting the source's time if you just the source is sending you here to train and you just cut it short right away. Like you're still in the cycle. You got to repeat it either way, but you just wasted like 100 years immediately. At least if you do something bad, you learn something from it, but you literally learn nothing from this, from like committing suicide. So that is like the
It's a
worst.
tough topic to talk about. Suicide's a very sensitive topic with a lot of people, but I grew up Catholic, so I that was very heavily implied. Like you'd never commit suicide, never do any of that stuff, and I kind of understand that, and that even if your life is terrible,
Mm.
you only get one life, and that you, you have a possibility of turning things around. Whereas if you turn it off, you quit, you don't get that opportunity. But
Yep.
also, and this is, I think, another important point, is that your life isn't just your life, in that you may have control over it, but your life belongs to the people around you as well, because you're part of a greater collective.
Yep.
You're an individual in a collective. And if you say, I'm switching off, that disrupts everyone around you. And so I can understand. I don't want to be insensitive to this. Some people just had enough of, I guess, life, and fair fair enough to them. But it can be a very selfish decision, I think, because it just disrupts everything around you. Because I don't think there's anybody out there that has nobody that loves them, and nobody wants somebody they love to commit suicide. Like
Yeah.
I've known, had a friend that's committed suicide. Wasn't particularly close with them, but it was very disruptive to everyone around them. Um,
I'm just
it
trying
doesn't
to
make
talk
me
about it.
dislike the person or be angry with them, but I wish that they hadn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had a family member that did that as well, and I would just my way of based off of theoretically and just to be rational, it doesn't do you any good as a part of this system. And obviously, everything that you said I believe in is uh, very true as well. You affect a lot more people than just yourself and those things. And either point of view that we're giving here is just there's more things to learn in life. And yeah, trying to be more positive and steer people away from that. But yeah, that's another
Yeah,
one of the rules that I've seen. So it's not going to do you any good. If you want to play the game, or like if you're trying to reset the game, that's not the way to do it. You got to play the game
yeah,
because you're here to learn. That's the most important
yeah.
thing. Learn and
There would be
progress.
one exception I'd put to that. I'd say euthanasia is a different story. Like if your game's about to end
Mm.
anyway, and you see a lot of suffering ahead of you, I think that it is fair for people to want to end, like to check out early. Um, but I personally wouldn't. But that doesn't mean I should dictate to others if they want to skip the most painful part of their death or whatever. I feel like that is absolutely fair.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. Yeah, I don't want to make
Yeah,
that decision for anybody, but if you
yeah,
want to make that yourself, I think that's reasonable given the circumstance that you
yeah.
mentioned.
Given the circumstance, yeah, and I think that that's an important thing to note. Some people are very much suffering, and that's uh, I don't I wouldn't want anyone to suffer indefinitely for no good reason.
Yes, yes. And yeah, so that kind of brings us to the end of this topic. We're discussing aliens and how non-human entities and how non-human entities are kind of supposedly theoretically in this type of simulation theory with us. We're all part of the same type of game and simulation. Our objectives and the main fundamental rules in this simulation is the same for every participant in this simulation, whether you are a non-human entity or a human entity, it's the same. And that's just to kind of like be the one version of it is be the best that you can be. Another version of it is just chase after what you want because people, uh, there are players in this game that I'm coming to the conclusion of that are not trying to be the best that they can be. By best, if you see that as good, some of them are doing actually really bad things by trying to be chasing after what they want. But supposedly, if you chase after what you want, you'll still get in the game somewhat rewarded. However, there's other rules of the game that also factor in, like karma. So karma is a completely different like set of rules from like the fundamental aspect of going after what you want. So if you're going after what you want, but you're hurting a lot of people, and you keep doing it, yeah, maybe you'll get better and better at hurting people. But also, you know what? There's a lot of karmic. retribution for that as well. So you'll have like a big smack in the face that comes back, or someone coming back to hurt you back one day, or something like that. So there's a whole bunch of different rules to the game, and if you're chasing after something positive, even though it's going to be struggling, as long as you seek out struggle, struggle will not seek you out. And that's kind of like the fundamental rule that we were discussing from the simulation theory and this overall podcast. Did you want to end it off on anything, Legend?
No, I think I would just add one part to it. I think that we both have a very similar life philosophy, but the way that we go about it is maybe different. But ultimately, we're walking, it seems like we're walking the same path, just perpendicular to each other. Just,
No, I was
if
exactly
that
the
makes
same
sense.
path as you until
Yeah.
until recently.
Yeah.
Until
Yeah.
recently. So it's
Yeah.
just
Fair enough.
yeah. That's why I feel like I'm just looking at a mirror when you're saying everything that you're saying to me. It's like wow.
Yeah.
I I feel like not in any type of weird way, but it's like oh man, you almost sound like you're my soulmate saying the exactly same thing as
Yeah.
I was saying and thinking the exact same thing that I was thinking. And it's just
I think people who think about this stuff a lot will usually come to a very similar conclusion, I think, but I don't think it is necessarily a common conclusion. Just it can happen.
I
Yeah.
think it's
I don't think
starting to
that
blow up now. All of this stuff because of
yeah, it's starting to. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's
So
yeah coming. It's time basically for
I think the thing about this particular way of thinking is that people can come to it on their own without religion or outside influence. Like the blueprints to all of this is imprinted in our like DNA. Just have to
potentially
listen to it.
yes. Yeah, it might
Yeah.
be um or it might just be you're an old soul. You're a grumpy old man playing this game and
Could be, yep.
that
I can
you have imprinted
yeah,
it in your DNA, but it hasn't been imprinted in other
possibly.
people yet either. But
Maybe.
yeah, thanks a lot, Legend, for your time on
No
this. I'm
worries.
gonna end the spaces right now.